Anesthesiologists, what was something you won't forget hearing from someone that was under?
I had an ovarian cyst removed a year ago and woke up from the anesthesia saying hand. Hand please. And making grabby hands with both my hands until the nurses finally came over and held my hands for about 5 minutes while I just smiled and tried to go back to sleep. I hadn't done that in a decade. I used to do it to my dad all the time as a kid to express that I wanted to hold his hand while I slept.
My boyfriend at the time had just gotten his wisdom teeth removed. On the ride home with his mouth full of gauze, he gets a call on his cell phone. He answered it and just starts talking away. Whoever it was on the other side could not possibly understand a word he was saying with all the gauze in his mouth. But man, he had a lot to talk about and they apparently didn't hang up. After about 5 minutes of this unintelligible phone conversation, he looks at me and says, "Ooh, a robot," and gives me the phone. I put it to my ear, and the whole time it's been the Walgreens pharmacy automated notice simply stating his prescription is ready for pickup, playing on repeat. Probably for the best.
I ask a patient after surgery how he feels. He opens his eyes, stares me dead on and says, "With my fingers." Then he goes right back to sleep.
This man has at least 2 kids.
I'm an anesthesiologist. The best story was a 40-some-year-old woman for appendectomy, said while I'm giving the propofol to induce anesthesia. She said, "Oh, I don't remember it tasting like that before," slurred. I said, "What does it taste like, since propofol doesn't usually elicit a taste reaction?" She almost yelled, "D's nuts," and was promptly under anesthesia thereafter. There have been other stories, but this one has the entire OR staff rolling laughing for minutes after she was under.
My aunt got rushed to the hospital for abnormal heart rate, but it wasn't a heart attack or stroke, but her heart was going at like 200 beats per minute or whatever it was. They had to put her under so they could shock her heart back to normal. As they're taking her under, the doctor says something like, "Okay," in it goes, and she immediately quips with, "That's what she said." All the doctors and nurses busted a gut laughing and told my uncle when he got there. He just shrugged and said, "That's my wife for ya."
One summer I was home from college and my dad needed me to pick him up after his very first colonoscopy. He was nervous, so I got there early. The nurse called me back and asked me to help wake him up, as they were having some trouble. I go back and am making chit-chat. "Oh Dad, you've got those cool booties on." He raised his head a little bit to look at them, then yelled, "Booty call." He is a Presbyterian pastor. A moment I will treasure forever.
One time a male biology student in his early 20s with a stuck kidney stone, was being put under for surgery. Just as the anesthesiologist was pushing meds and telling me to count back from 100, I looked up at him in a DGED but focused gaze and said, "You're so pretty. You could be in movies." Then blackness. Anesthesiologist was like a grizzled 70-year-old hunched back looking guy with a lopsided grimace and more ear hair than head hair. Great doc though. Very last thing I remember hearing was the OR nurses cracking up laughing. It was a smallish medical community and I knew some of the people there, so as a joke somebody snuck his headshot into my chart. I like to think it was him gunning for a second career though. Edit. Due to the rather sensitive nature of the surgery, he hit me with a wallop of midazolam on the way into the OR, so I was already pretty juiced by the time they started. My husband had to undergo a colonoscopy, and when he came around he started aggressively grilling the staff about Abraham Lincoln. He isn't a historian or anything, he works as a business analyst and knows next to nothing about Abraham Lincoln. Bonus story. One time he took Ambien and got super fed up. Initially told me that he couldn't walk up the stairs to bed because he was a transformer and his legs had turned to wheels. Finally got him upstairs and he made the observation that if peach trees could sing to each other like whales it would be beautiful. I bet they would sing Adele. Then he burst into tears.
I have no recollection of this, but according to my mom, when she met me in the recovery room after wisdom tooth extraction, I was very eager to tell her something, but my mouth was full of gauze. So they gave me a pen and I wrote something on the surgical bib. Hours later, when I was back in reality, she asked me, "What was with the meow meows, my son?" I had no idea what she was talking about, so she showed me the bib. It said, "Meow meow meow meow, meow 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 meow, meow 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 meow." The meow mix theme.
My personal story. When I had my wisdom teeth out, I kept holding a fake camera up to my face saying, "You're beautiful," and making clicking noises while I was under. I'm a professional photographer and my dental surgeon ended up booking a session with me a year later.
I had a guy, nefarious character, heavy use history, who got a bunch of ketamine, probably too much, in recovery from one of the other docs to help with severe pain after his abscess drainage. I was asked to check on him in an hour as the other doc had left for the evening. Went over and saw him in the K-hole drooling on himself but otherwise fine, so I left and came back an hour later. First thing he says to me is, "Why did you do that to me?" I asked him what he meant and he said, "You don't understand, I lived another man's life in there." I apologized and asked him, "How long do you think you were in there?" For reference, it had been something like an hour and a half or 2 hours since his trip began. I don't know, maybe 30 years. I was speechless. I apologized again, made sure he knew he was safe, made sure he wasn't hurting, and made damn sure he knew it wasn't me that did it to him. TLDR, patient time traveled 30 years in the K-hole.
I've heard of people who have dreams that are so vivid that they live entire lives in them. It f's them up when they wake up BC they have memories of their kids who were never real.
Kind of on topic, when my mum woke up after having a stroke, the doctor asked if she recognized the people in the room. She got my sister's name right, called me my brother's name, and smiled real big at my stepdad and called him asshole.
Greater than called me my brother's name. My dad and several others do that all the time and none of them had a stroke.
Patient here. Came out of anesthesia and heard Gautier's, somebody that I used to know, playing in the recovery room. I asked my so why they were playing it at like 10x the normal speed and the nurse just goes, "Okay, so she's not ready to go home yet, lol."
Lol, is that a thing? I guess your perception must be so delayed or intermittent that it plays fast in your mind. How about the other way around? I took my mum for her surgery on her right shoulder and her anesthesiologist was this very dignified, solemn older Persian gentleman. My mum told him, "Just so you know, I wrote directions on myself to make sure you get it right." She was joking around, but she actually does this. Old battleaxe nurse habits die hard. He looked her straight in the eye and said deadpan, "Great. So let's get started on your left knee." Totally got her. It was great.
I once came out of anesthesia after an endoscopy, which can cause you to burp pretty much the whole day, and my fiancé asked, "How are you doing?" I misheard and answered as though she said, "What are you doing?" My answer was, "Little burps," said very confidently. I also started crying on the way home because I wanted one egg. I never crave eggs.
Not an anesthesiologist but a story from my mum about me, while I was under. I had a double jaw surgery scheduled for April 21, 2016. The procedure was fine. I remember waking up halfway through it and getting more anesthesia. After the surgery ended, they put me into the hospital room to let the DG wear off of me. I don't remember much of this time, so this comes from my mum, but she was sitting in the room with me, watching the news on the TV. I wake up and I'm quiet for a little bit before I start sobbing. My mum thinks it's because my mouth hurts. My mouth is wired shut, so I actively can't correct her with words, and have to try and write out on paper what I'm crying about. The news was broadcasting about Prince's death, and I was hysterical over the fact that I apparently killed Prince and that I had to turn myself in.
I was told after surgery I said I love dogs and I want to eat the Taliban.
At least you said it correctly.
This guy the first was dating, he asked me to take him to get his wisdom teeth removed. He told me that anesthesia doesn't affect him a lot and we were supposed to go on a road trip the next day. So anyway, he gets wheeled out of the dentist by an old nurse. I'm behind the driver's seat and I see him smacking his lips looking up at the sky. She opens my car door and he said, "I love her, I love her." He then proceeded to ask me to marry him several times. He tried to pull out his gauze and I told him stop and he said, "Man, this bitch is bossy." Then he wanted a milkshake. I would suggest a place and he would scream no. Finally we agree on a place and he tells me he'll give me directions. I drive for 15 minutes before I ask him what we're doing and he said he has no idea. We're in the drive-through and he says, "I have something for you." I swear I thought he had bought me a ring the way he had been proposing for last hour. It was his newly extracted teeth. "They let me keep them, I want you to have them." He lived on base at the time and was yelling at the gate while they checked his ID for them to hurry you PPP. I finally get him to his room, in bed. He's happily eating his milkshake with a spoon. His mouth was a mess of blood and milkshake. He asked me for a kiss. I gave him a peck. We're married now. Edit. Wow. Thanks for all the love, y'all. He's just as sweet when he's not sedated too, so I'm a lucky girl.
Ah, so you accepted his teeth proposal. A wise choice. My aunt, who notoriously despises fast food, old Mexican lady whose food is as good as it gets, woke up and looked at my uncle and said, "Are you the sexy man that's gonna take me to McDonald's?" If you knew her, you would know that she would never say that. She has never lived it down.
Did the sexy man get her some McDonald's?
My mum woke up from dental surgery, and when we were leaving the surgeon's office, he gave her a goodie bag with floss and a toothbrush and stuff, and the whole way home she kept asking if she could eat the candy that the dentist gave her. Every time I told her there was no candy, she looked so heartbroken, like a little kid when their goldfish dies or something. Then we stopped at CVS on the way home and she wandered off. I found her in the candy aisle holding a giant bag of fun-sized candy, and when I told her to put it back on the shelf, she dropped it on the floor and galloped away laughing at me.
Buy her some damn candy, SMH.
My husband woke up from anesthesia after a colonoscopy just after the doctor walked in. He didn't see the doctor and told me, "No blowjob for you." Then fell back asleep and ripped a big fart. The doctor looked at me and busted out laughing. He said not to be embarrassed. People say the weirdest things, but this one he'd remember.
As I put someone out for a colonoscopy one time, the patient said, "You're cute. Are you gonna see my butt?" Then she was out. Edit. For those of you asking, yes, for colonoscopies we typically use deep sedation. This is in the US. 99.9% of the time this means propofol, the Michael Jackson D. Most of us will give some lidocaine through your IV first. This helps prevent the burning sensation in your IV that propofol can sometimes give, and follow it right up with propofol to knock you out. Almost never need analgesics like fentanyl.
As I was getting sedated for my vasectomy, the last thing I remember is thinking the anesthetist was pretty cute. 14 years later I still get self-conscious thinking about whether or not I vocalized those thoughts as the aesthetic took hold. Edit. Seems I was lucky to get the option to be put under. Lucky to be in Australia, and have a good specialist who gave me options, I guess. Hats off to those of you doing it under local. I'll pass.
I was under general anesthesia to get my gallbladder removed. As I was being wheeled back through the double doors, there was a giant TV screen that listed the surgeries going on. I was way too loopy to actually read it, but I swear I saw elbowectomy and started hysterically laughing over the idea of removing an elbow and being left with a floppy arm. Apparently what I actually said was, "Elbow Jaloo," and then passed out.
Elbow Jello, great band name.
A little girl was going under and she was holding her mother's hand. She reached out for my hand with her other, and as she was going out she joined mine with her mother's and said, "You would be a nice daddy." I probably went beetroot red as I blushed.
Now my daughter does this same poo with her Krav Maga instructor, and he's like 12 years younger than me. It's so embarrassing. She doesn't have the excuse of being on DG though. She just really likes that instructor.
Not the anesthesiologist, but is a surgery tech working next to them. Patient, woozily, *, doc, will I still be able to integrate after this? Gas passer, *, integrate. Like what? Patient, *, like the sum of f, x, from a to b when. Gas passer, *, pushes more milk of amnesia _.
What's the integral of e caret x? E caret x. More dg. What's the integral of e caret x? SEEAAAAAAAA. We're good to go.
Apparently when I was going under I told the anesthesiologist, "Don't mess this up, I know where you work."
I have had to get colonoscopies every couple years since I was 24, so I've gone under quite a bit for someone my age. Every time, when I wake up, I'm crying, and a nurse is comforting me. They say I don't tell them why I'm upset, but I'm weeping every damn time. It has gotten to the point where I warn the nurses I'll be sobbing, but to not take it too seriously. Anyone else have this? Edit. Okay, wow, so this is very common. Thanks everyone for sharing. I legitimately feel less weird now and I appreciate it. I've learned. 1. I'm apparently very lucky to not be vomiting alongside the weeping. 2. I should tell my anesthesiologist about this reaction, and they can switch up my DG and possibly help avoid this reaction in the future. 3. Not everyone gets put under for colonoscopies, and I think this may be a geographic difference. I'm in the US. Lastly, for those asking, my mom died of colon cancer and they found 8 polyps when I was 24. Fascinating, so many of us are in the same pootie club. As a reminder, please do not delay if you have colon cancer in your family or you are 45 or older. It's not fun, but it ain't that bad, and it can save your life. Schedule it now. This is your sign. Do it.
No, I'm usually aggressive. In the 5 times I've been put under, I have almost exclusively accused people of stealing body parts and or another crime. Wisdom teeth was kidnapping and my kidney. Gallbladder was my murder. Appendectomy, I accused the poor nurse of disposing of my family and I would make her pay. Fractured skull, brain injury, I cried in anger because they wouldn't give me back my face.
What on earth, lol?
Had my wisdom teeth out. When I woke up I was so excited to get my now extracted teeth and keep them as a souvenir. The nurse said I couldn't. She wheeled me out to the front door where my wife was waiting to load me into the car. She saw my disappointed face and asked, "What's wrong, honey?" I turned and pointed to the nurse and said through my gauze stuffed mouth, "This effing bitch won't let me keep my teeth." My stunned wife apologized and the nurse explained that it's fine, but they were a biohazard, to which I replied incredulously, "They were in my effing mouth an hour ago." Edit. On a slightly related note, my mill has promised me that I can have her titanium hip after her cremation for a shifter in my car. Love that woman.
I got mine in a little plastic tooth-shaped box. That effing bitch stole your teeth.
NAA, but I was part of the operating theatre team. There was a girl in her late 20s like me and we had a good laugh when I went to bring her down to the OR from the ward. I think I might have brought her into the procedure room too, but at that point, the doctors would have been talking to her. Afterward, when she was in the recovery room, she was just after waking up, so I went to check on her. She smiled at me and screamed, "Hey Nardoneski, check it out. How big is my DK now? Is it huge?" and then just kinda went back to sleep while I held my laughs till I got to a less public place. The fun thing about anesthesia and post-op is while you're still high as a kite, there's a decent chance you'll have some idea of what you were saying. The next day I was on the same ward collecting another person across from her, so I decided to say hi. She was sitting with her mum, so I just asked how she was feeling, etc., and then asked if she remembered what she had said to me in the recovery room. The girl turned bright red and just started laughing at that point.
Anesthesiologist here. For better or for worse, I'm a big Green Bay Packers fan, so I wear a scrub cap with the Packers name, colors on it. I was doing a pre-op evaluation on a kid who was a big New Orleans Saints fan, and when I walked into the room, his first words to me were, "Packers suck." I laughed and continued to prepare him and his family for his redo open heart surgery procedure. Fast forward to surgery a couple days later, and his mom had come back to the OR as he was going to sleep. Given the fact this was a 3 or 4 time redo sternotomy, going into the chest again, he had a higher risk of major complications from the surgery. I started to push some meds to have him go to sleep while his mom was holding his hand, and as he drifted off, he said, "Wait, I have to tell my mom something." She got emotional saying how much she loved him, and we were all waiting to hear what he had to say so urgently. I paused giving him the medication, but he was already well on his way to being under, and as he drifted off to sleep, he said, "Packers suck. Kid did great, hope he is doing well, smiley face." Edit. RIP inbox, thank you for all the awards. The kid did great, and hopefully will not need any more surgery for 20+ years, cheers everyone.
So the thought of this dude dying isn't the greatest, but the thought that his last words could have been, "Packers suck," to his mom is pretty funny. I got a shot in gas once. When it kicked in I started to hallucinate like crazy and told my nurse it was like mushrooms. When I woke up, my guardian said, "So I heard you've done mushrooms." Everything before and after that was very blurry.
One guy said, before falling asleep, "Whoa. That feels like a dime bag."
My anesthesiologist told me that the first round would feel, and quote with British accent, "poorly of course, the first round I give you is going feel like you drank a 6-pack in 10 minutes flat. The next, the one that puts you down, will feel like you took a huge shot and you'll fall asleep by the end of it." It was pretty trippy. Edit. Wow, this blew up. My husband had knee surgery. After he woke up he half yelled half whispered APPPPPPPLEEEEJUIIIIICE. So the nurse gave him apple juice, several small cups full. He grinned like a toddler and said apple juice and immediately flopped back and went back to sleep for all of 10 minutes until he woke back up gasping that he couldn't breathe. His mum, who I had met maybe 1 or 2 times at this point, went up to the foot of his bed to grab a nurse in the doorway and he bolted upright. That man projectile vomited pure apple juice directly into her face, body, the wall, the door, hallway. I have never seen anything like it in my entire life. His mum stood there soaked in juice vomit and he just rubbed his eyes and said, "Ah, I feel better," bam. Back to sleep for another 2 hours, lol.
So, what you're saying is that I will never escape the gross side of parenthood, even when my children have spouses' tears of joy. My dad is super resistant to anesthesia and most pain meds, which sucks for him. He warned them when he went to get his hip replaced, but evidently they ignored or underestimated his statement. Mid-hip replacement, he woke up, sat up in his seat, and attempted to strangle the doctor to death. He got far closer than a man in his condition should have. When I say mid-hip replacement, the hip was fully replaced. They were about to begin like closing the hole, or whatever the terminology is.
I was giving a young female patient sedation for a routine colonoscopy, and as I pushed the propofol, sleepy medicine, it started to hit her. She sat straight up and yelled to everyone in the procedure room, "I shaved my asshole for you," and she flopped down on her pillow and she was asleep.
That was nice of her.
I'm sure the anesthesiologist that did my son's dental surgery will never forget him. Specifically, because he came out after the fact clearly trying very hard not to laugh to tell my wife about it. Kiddo was just chatting away while he was getting ready. Now my son is autistic and at the time had a very distinct way of speaking and pattern of emphasis along with a lisp. I literally cannot translate how he sounded talking into text. Edit. Thanks, you, Schmobzola, for giving me a good idea of actually how to describe this. Imagine you had a soundboard of Butters from South Park that had all these words on it from vastly different conversations and strung them together into the sentences below and you'll have a pretty decent idea of it. He sounds a bit different than my son, but it's about as close as I can get. Anyway, just as they're getting ready to put him under, he goes, "You're gonna need some hardcore nighttime medicine cause I have ADHD and, out, practically snoring even." They get to work, finish up and pull the mask off him. The literal second the mask was off his nose he bolts upright and finishes his sentence from however long earlier. That stuff don't work good on me.
Windows XP reboot sound.
I was put under for a few surgeries. The first one I saw a pile of seats or something, and I started talking about how they looked like laser tag guns and invited him to go play laser tag after. The second was for a hysterectomy, and when I got wheeled into the room get up I screamed, "Time for everyone to see my vag. Get excited." My oncologist said it made her day.
One of my patients coming out of sedation embarrassed her husband who was in the room by saying that during their sex he likes to have Vicks rubbed on his backside.
Thank goodness I'm not the only one who wants open air passages while I get my F on.
When coming out of it I was really angry my fiancé was trying to steal my ice cream. I did have any ice cream but I was convinced he was trying to steal it.
Am an anesthetist. Woke up a 70-years-old PT who got a penile prosthesis implant for erectile dysfunction. First thing out of his mouth in his post-surgery stupor was to request a private room and find out when he could take this baby out for a test drive. He was a happily married jokester.
I initially read this as you woke up as a 70-year-old, perhaps after self-medicating a little too hard. I was giving birth and I told the entire medical staff to go F themselves, then turned my head and told the anesthesiologist, "Not you though, I like you."
I gave a patient an IV dose of ketamine for a pain procedure. He proceeded to tell the room that everyone had turned into cartoon characters and then he announced he was melting into a wall of butter. Still my finest achievement as a physician.
Recently was given ketamine myself. I visualized that I turned into a cartoon character from a third-person perspective and went into outer space on a spaceship where I was thoroughly cleaned on an assembly line. This happened while the doc and a nurse were scrubbing sand out of road rash injuries. Coolest thing ever. Edit. I do not support trying ketamine recreationally. Respiratory arrest and death are real possibilities if done incorrectly. Details. No, it wasn't a cycling accident. I was run over by a truck doing donuts at the beach. This wasn't typical road rash. Sand was everywhere and lots of it. I'm lucky to be alive. That's all I'm willing to share. Cheers everyone.
I was under anesthesia to get my wisdom teeth removed. When I was slowly waking up, I heard the nurses talking about Hakeem Olajuwon. I started talking about which rockets I knew. How I knew Rudy T. They're all like, yeah you do, okay. My girlfriend is sitting there laughing with them, playing along as if I'm so high and talking poo. In reality, I was a bartender at a place where they would frequent. I knew all those guys. And my girlfriend effing knew I knew them. She just thought the whole situation was so funny though, that she didn't just say something like, no he's serious, it's true.
As a 17-year-old I had a colonoscopy because GI doctors couldn't figure out why I couldn't go number 2. I mention this as an important detail, because after the colonoscopy I was still very much under the anesthesia effects, loopy, and when my mom tried to offer saltines I started screaming, how many calories do those things have? And my mom starts panicking like, calm down, lower your voice, people are gonna think you have an eating disorder or something, and I just said, I can't talk quiet, what's going on? The ironic thing was, I guess besides dysregulating my ability to control vocal volume, the anesthesia kind of acted like a truth serum in a way. No one found out I had an eating disorder until I almost died from it a year later, but I can't believe that wasn't taken into consideration as to why I couldn't go to the bathroom. Can't poop if you don't eat.
I was brought home after by my wife but was still loopy. She told the construction workers outside to make sure I didn't leave the house. They let me help pour concrete and fixed what I effed up. Nice guys. My daughter made them free limeade so they were always cool with us.
Oh, that's quite wholesome.
I was injected with something to loosen me up before they rolled my bed into the operating room. My bed was pretty wide and definitely comfortable. The nurse says to me, okay, we're going to move you over to the skinny table now. The reason she called the operating table that skinny table was because it was narrow compared to my bed. My get-up brain interpreted it differently though, so I asked, skinny table? Where do you take the fat patients?
My wife was all doped up during her C-section and asked the anesthesiologist, did they cut me open yet? He calmly told her they did. To which she replied, or poo, with a huge grin on her face. The doctor and I lost it. Edit, wow, this blew up overnight. Thanks for all the awards and stories. I'm scrolling through everything laughing my ass off. Y'all are the best.
I had a C-section and wouldn't shut up about how I felt like I was floating in the ocean. I offered the anesthesiologist a hit of the good poo, and completely forgot I was getting a baby pulled out of me. They brought my son over to show me and I told the nurse it was a cute baby, then asked if it was Maria's. I didn't know any pregnant Marias at that moment.
I was out to have my wisdom teeth removed and I remember going, whoosh, my butt fell out when the DG started hitting.
When coming to after surgery, I told my mill that she was naughty and needed a spanking.
I had a colonoscopy last month and woke up rested and totally lucid. Bummer. However, when my husband had his vasectomy after our son was born, they gave him a local, it's an outpatient procedure, and some Valium and pain meds after. He was loopy. I stopped at Walgreens to fill his prescription, and he said, as he lolled in the passenger seat with a ice pack on his genitals, hey, will you get me a Coke? I nod. And some Doritos? I nod again and go to leave car. And some Oreos? And some Reese's Cups? And some Twizzlers? We were 38, well behind junk food years, not stoners, and he was 6'2" and 170, not obese or a binge eater. I said, are you serious? And he grinned drunkenly and said, yeah. I grabbed the baby carrier and said, I'm taking the baby with me. He literally did finger guns. This man is a college professor. WHO wears bow ties. I buy his snacks and painkillers and head back outside, and he is telling a guy at the red box video kiosk next to our car that his urologist said he had the best kind of penis for the procedure because his shaft is very straight and uniform. I took him home quickly, gave him his snacks and let him sleep it off. He woke up hours later covered in candy wrappers with orange Dorito fingers and asked, what happened? That was 13 years ago and it's still the best.
Patient here. I was a teen. Apparently before I went under I kept mumbling, it's buried, don't worry, stop worrying, it's buried, it's gone. My mum was there and said the staff were eyeballing her uncomfortably, and years later to this day every year she still asks me if remember anything. That if ever I need to talk she'll support me no matter what. I honestly do not know what I meant.
Greater than I honestly do not know what I meant. It's buried, don't worry. Stop worrying, it's buried, it's gone asterisk.
Nurse here, was 22F, had a teen boy come out of anesthesia who looked at me and said, "Hey, you're the girl from last night." I had to reassure everyone that that wasn't me.
I don't know. I heard that you were the nurse from last night.
Am patient's relative rather than anesthesiologist, but as he started going under, patient, hydraulics engineer, started trying to tell the doctor what type of pump they should install to fix the busted blood vessel in his brain.
I'm a hobbyist mechanic and a huge gearhead, and while falling asleep I have caught myself wondering how big of an engine I could swap into my cat.
Was recently under for abdominal surgery. My partner of 17 years who I dearly love was the first face I remember seeing when coming out of anesthesia. I looked at him and said, "Who the F **K are you and why are you staring at me?" He's still laughing.
I looked at my, now, ex-husband and said, "And you are?" Apparently I didn't recognize him. I got put under for my wisdom teeth at 17. When I came to, the nurse or whatever was like, "Okay, you're probably a little groggy, just sit tight for a while." And I was like, "F that, I feel amazing." And proceeded to swing my legs off the table, which sent my top half spinning right after it and falling flat on my face. People laughed. I remember the laughter.
Just FYI, I did the same thing after I got my wisdom teeth out. Then did it again the next time I was put under. In other words, make sure you give people a warning next time you're knocked out, cause this is probably just your first reaction when you wake up. My husband is onto me now and will stop me next time. Next time.
I woke up singing the Magic School Bus theme song while someone 3 beds away was screaming in agony.
In my defense, your singing was really bad.
I don't blame you.
My dad asked my mum to pick up his butt cheek so he could fart and it was too heavy.
This is the best one, by far.
My son, then 10 or so, was coming to after being under when getting his broken wrist set and casted. They had to do traction to get everything aligned or something. There were quite a few people in the room, but his D-Ged self-directed all his attention to me. He was describing Big Daddy from BioShock and kept repeating, "Dad, you know. You know what I'm talking about." Because I couldn't think of the name of the game at the time. Then he gets frustrated and yells at me, "You son of a bitch." Lots of laughs from the hospital staff. I was 17 at the time but got my wisdom teeth taken out. Everything went as planned, but I woke up and remember seeing the oral surgeon. Me, being dosed with Grader giggle juice and having no idea WTF I was doing, asked her if she would like to grab boba sometime. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. 5 years later, she let me shadow for part of my dental school shadowing requirement and is giving me a law for applications next cycle. Not a boba date, but all things considered, she was a great mentor.
I expected the ending to be, 5 years later we're happily married and expecting our first child in February.
She looks like Jennifer Aniston. I look like Austin Powers. Things just don't add up.
I had a surgery to remove bone spurs from my big toes in early February of 2005. I woke up while the doctor was grinding the bone down and asked if he thought Donovan McNabb could lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl win. He nodded at the anesthesiologist and I don't remember anything after that.
As an Eagles fan, he wasn't wrong to put you back under.
Surgeon told me that I kept them all laughing through my facial surgery. They had to keep giving me more anesthetic to shut me up, which is probably why I was sick as a dog afterwards. I pressed him hard for details but he refused to tell me what I'd said.
My husband had his ACL and meniscus repaired. When they brought him back into the room, he stared at me through half-closed eyes until the nurses left and then said, "I love you. I'm glad you're here." I melted. Then he conked back out for about half an hour and woke up with a big gasp. I thought he was in pain. That's how loud it was, and went, "Burger King BURGEEEEERRRRRR." I said, "You want a Burger King burger?" He said, "I do." So I had to get him a Burger King burger for dinner. He doesn't remember anything until he was back home several hours later with Burger King sitting in front of him. Lol.
The spouse stories are always pretty good. Apparently I woke up with dry mouth, asked the nurse for water and was denied, so I shouted at my husband to spit in my mouth. It seems I won't be living that one down anytime soon. A girl woke up and asked if she had been hit by a train, and then when asked if she knew why she was there, she looked down and patted her chest and said implants. She was having her ACL repaired and her mum was there. It was me, I was 19, I've never lived it down.
Did you want implants or something?
Was under anesthesia for a breast reduction. As I was coming out, my nurse was talking to me and apparently I started saying, "OMG, it's an angel and she looks like Barbie." I kept yelling for Barbie angel and possibly kept trying to hug her and pet her hair. I cried for her on the way home. She called to check on me later that night and referred to herself as Nurse Barbie Angel. She was the sweetest.
I think you just gave the nurse a new name for her co-workers.
Patient here. I was getting my wisdom teeth out, and before I went under I told them that bananas are radioactive. When I woke up, I proceeded to repeat that several times and explain radioactivity.
My husband was put under to get his wisdom teeth out. He was a little anxious and also is just kind of anal. He's an engineer, so he read his pre-op instructions front to back like a dozen times. One of the things it said was, "You may experience profound disorientation upon awakening." As he woke up, he opened one eye and looked around the room, then said extremely huffily, "I wouldn't call this profound." Then he started crying.
I had mine out in a hospital, tachycardia concerns, and I was given 2 Ativan to calm me. It made me uncharacteristically revealing about my feelings. So as my bed was being wheeled down to the operating room, we came across 2 nurses walking by, and I asked him earnestly, "I know I'm a great big guy and full-grown man, but would someone hold my hand? I'm just a little nervous." Those 2 nurses both put down their stuff and reached for my hands. They held them all the way into the OR and put extra blankets from the warmer to make sure I felt at ease. They even searched me out later in post-op to check on me. That response, their sincere kindness, was a true revelation to me, and ever since that day, I've been unafraid to show my genuine emotion and feelings with others. It's made life immeasurably better.
I had a rough labor and delivery with my first baby, and they had given me several shots of pain meds. I had 3 days of labor, back labor, Charlie horses in the calves of my legs, and ultimately a forceps delivery. Yeah, this was back in 1977. I was so DGED up and exhausted by the delivery. The doctor was finally stitching me up, and someone in the room commented that maybe I wouldn't have such a hard time the next baby. I vaguely remember lifting my head partway off the table and told the doctor to stitch me all the way up and we wouldn't have to worry about the next time. The room erupted in laughter, and as I threw my head back down I was so pissed they were laughing because I was serious. P.S. I had 2 more babies a few years later.
I was coming out of the fog of anesthesia from a colonoscopy. Apparently I didn't recognize my wife and refused her affections, telling her she was pretty, but I was married. Got big brownie points for that.
When I was coming out of anesthesia, my wife wasn't there. I'll call her Sarah. So I kept saying, "Where is my Sarah? I want my Sarah. She should be here. I need her. Where is my Sarah?" Apparently the nurses went to the waiting room and were laughing and telling my wife about it. I got big brownie points, and a little bit of teasing for it.
Thank you for watching. We upload new videos every day, so be sure to come back for more fun. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed the video.